Hey guys, this is Yoda. This will be my Blood DK guide, Season 1, War Within Mythic Plus. This section will cover the build, so talents, stats, embellishments, trinkets, etc. And there will also be a second video covering the rotation, so how to actually play Blood DK, and there's also going to be a doc that will be attached to this. The doc is generally going to be way more updated than the video if things change, so be sure to keep an eye on that. And also, you can always hit me up in Twitch chat or if on Discord if needed, if you need something answered or if something here is wrong. All right, so without further ado, these are the talents that I usually play. This is my default build. There are some controversial talents in here, so we'll go over those. First, we'll go over the hero tree though. So you're almost always going to want to, and by almost always I mean always going to want to play Deathbringer. Sand Lane doesn't really exist for Blood DK right now. It's pretty much worse in every scenario. The main two problems are that number one, the haste that it gives you are kind of wasted. Because of the change to Death Strike. Having more Death Strikes is not super useful since it can't double heal damage that you took. Better to have heavier Death Strikes. Secondly, just in terms of damage and DR, it's just slower than Deathbringer. So you prefer to play Deathbringer in pretty much every scenario. Next, we'll go over the class tree. So this is the base build I always play, pretty much every key. One controversial talent is Rune Tap. This is controversial because spending a rune on Rune Tap gives you less runic power than spending it on Heart Strike. However, in my opinion, Rune Tap makes the most sense. One of Blood DK's main weaknesses is that once you get to higher keys, it has some troubles surviving, and the main trouble when you get surviving isn't because you run out of RP, it's because you get one shot, and Rune Tap is really good at countering that. If you don't want to play Rune Tap, then you can play Heartbreaker, which is definitely going to give you more RP, so that's also a good choice. The other controversial talent I have is Umbilicus Eternus. This talent gives you a lot of shielding after every Vamp Blood. It makes your cooldown, in my opinion, last like a little bit longer. In big trash pulls where you're taking a lot of damage, this gives you space to regain some runic power in case you had to Death Strike a lot. It helps you build up your pool again. Some people say this does nothing though, so if you don't want to play it, then you can play Heartbreaker. If you already have Heartbreaker, then you can play like this. This is a decent build that I see a lot of people playing. Personally, I wouldn't play it, but there it is. Another choice you can make, which I haven't seen anyone do, is you can drop these three talents: Ossified Vitriol, Perseverance, and Rapid Decomp for Heartbreaker, Gore Fiends, and Tightening Grasp. This is roughly a 7% damage loss since these talents all give damage, which is pretty hefty. Pretty hefty hit to be taking, but you know, if you need AoE silence, then you need AoE silence. So this is how you get it, in my opinion. On the left, we have quite a few choices in the class tree. This is mainly where you're going to be customizing per key. So I'm going to say 5 talents, and you can pick 3. So you've got Blood Draw, which is a little bit more survivability. Reduce damage you take by 10, reduces cost of Death Strike every 2 minutes. AMZ, which is, you know, the zone you put down, makes people take less damage in it from magic. Asphyxiate, which is your single target stun. Short AMZ, which makes your AMZ 30 seconds less, which is actually pretty valuable this season because of all the damage your group is taking that's magical. Control Undead, which is kind of useful. Mostly I've found it in Necrotic Wake to be useful. Outside of that, I haven't found too many uses, but I'm sure someone will find it. So that's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can pick 3. Next we've got Cold Thirst and Proliferating Chill. Generally, we're going to default to Cold Thirst here for the short CD kick and some free RP. If you find a situation in the key where you need to be spamming Chains of Ice, for instance, to stop a lot of Fixate ads or just to kite in general, you can take Proliferating Chill there. The other choice we have is Soul Reaper versus Grip of the Dead. Grip of the Dead is more useful for kiting if you need to run away from like a bunch of mobs. No AoE slow from the rest of your group. This is your best AoE slow that you can get. Probably better than spamming Chains of Ice. So yeah, Grip of the Dead is useful there. It is a relatively large single target loss to drop Soul Reaper, so you want to avoid that when possible. Also, if you want to play both, then remember what I said, you have 5 talents, you can pick 3. Well, you can just pick 2 instead, and then you also get Grip of the Dead. So that's another choice you have. So those are the talents. For stats, you're going to want to prioritize Verse number 1 and Mastery number 2 for Mythic Plus, in my opinion. Verse is the best stat defensively, just gives you more damage and healing and decreases the damage you take. And also increases basically all of your absorbs are also increased by Verse. Mastery gives you a better blood shield. Some people were saying that it's not as valuable now that blood shield's capped 50%. I very, very rarely run into that. I would say Mastery is just as valuable as it was before. And then your other 2 stats are Crit and Haste. So Crit is actually your best damage stat, but it doesn't really do too much defensively. It's basically just parry chance, which is not super valuable. I would say I would still prioritize Verse. Verse is definitely number 1. Then if you like really want to do some more damage, you could prioritize crit and mastery equally. And then haste is your worst stat. I still play 5% because I hate playing 0, it just feels so clunky. But, you know, according to all the simulations, haste is terrible, both for survivability and for damage. For damage, it's definitely really bad because most of your damage doesn't scale with haste. Like, the entire Deathbringer hero tree doesn't scale with haste. Blood Plague doesn't scale with haste. Tombstone, Bone Storm, all don't scale with haste. So haste is really bad for damage. And for survivability, or we were mentioning before, you don't really want to be death striking too much. It's much better to be doing heavier death strikes now, because your death strikes don't like don't heal more from the same damage event. Like once you take damage from a damage event and you death strike it once, you can't death strike it again. So extra death strikes aren't really that useful unless you're taking massive damage. And in those situations, generally it's better to like figure it out by rotating your cooldowns or having bloodlust or getting externals or something, rather than worrying about just like dumping your stats into haste, because that's gonna, you know, be wasteful. You have your tier set, so there's definitely want to be wearing this tier set as much as you can. You don't really need to think about it once you wear it. Basically, it's around Bone Shield. As long as you have Bone Shield, you have some DR. When your Bone Shields get consumed, you get a little bit extra. And when you have more Bone Shields, you do more damage. And when you have less Bone Shield, you have a chance to generate Bone Shields. You don't really play around this too much. Just stay over 6 Bone Shields, which you were doing anyway for Ossuary, so don't worry too much about that. Definitely do wear the tier set when you get it. For your trinkets, right now the trinkets are kind of undertuned, I think. All the trinkets that are like considered decent are just giving stats. Like this is a Delve trinket, it gives you mastery and strength and has a low chance to proc an adverse effect. This is a raid trinket, it gives you strength and verse, which is it gives you main stat and your highest secondary, and you have to like kind of balance around it by either staying still or moving. There's also the Skarmorak Shard and another on-use that just gives you mastery from the dungeon pool. There's the Arakar Sackbrood, which is kind of not great because it gives you haste, and haste is not that good. But basically, there's also this Spelunker's Trinket, which gives you crit, which, you know, isn't that great defensively, but it gives you like a lot if you count the amount that gives your ally. But basically, the general rule right now is that if it gives you stats, or you can use it to give you stats, then it's pretty good. And if it gives you like damage or an absorb amount, then it's undertuned. Surely something about that will change, surely, but for now that's how it is. So basically we're just playing stat sticks for trinkets. Embellishments are in kind of a similar spot. Right now I'm playing this embellishment that basically just does damage based on my socketed gems. I think it's somewhat maximized, and it does like roughly 1% per embellishment, and I have 2 of them, so it's like 2% single target, way less for a dungeon overall. There's also Dust Thread Lining and Binding of Binding, which you can play. But right now, I think embellishments are kind of undertuned. I'm not sure if they're going to do something about that, so I would probably wait for further later news on embellishments. If they really don't change anything, then Binding of Binding is technically the best one if you convince someone else to wear it. Otherwise, Dust Thread Lining is good. For gems and enchants, so there's a weird mechanic now. Look at this. If you look at this primary gem, it says it gives you stats plus move speed per unique gem color. You don't need to use the move speed one. There's another one that gives crit effect, which is going to be technically better. I prefer move speed on DK because it's kind of a wheelchair class. But yeah, so you're going to want to use that by using 1 gem of every color that you can get. The color is determined by the first gem in the slot. So right now, see how like, for instance, this gem is like heavy verse, low mastery. It's considered a blue gem. This is like high mastery, low verse, considered a purple gem. So you want 1 of every gem color. Probably not worth the stamina gem, but like the other 4 colors, you want 1 of each. And you're going to be, after that, you're going to be prioritizing, you know, verse mastery. I have 5% haste just because like I hate playing low haste, but it's probably wrong, to be honest. Prio verse mastery. If you want to play a little bit more for damage, so you could prio verse and then crit, then mastery, but obviously it's going to be a little bit worse defensively, so consider that. For enchants, we're going with Leech. You could easily play avoidance or speed. Doesn't matter too much on those. For the rest, just make sure your gear is like enchanted. You want to play Radiant Verse, I think. You want to play the armor kit, and you want to play the, this says int on it, but it's actually just main stat for your chest. Other than that, just prioritize verse and mastery stats. I think there is an item in the raid, like a special item for your weapon known as the Befouler's Syringe. Right now, that item is horribly undertuned, so surely that also gets fixed. I really don't think Blizzard wants us running around with like these items that just are bad but are also super rare. So we'll see how that goes. I actually can't find the Prowler Syringe here, so that might be a lie. But anyway, right now, any item that basically says it gives you stats is like okay, and then any item that gives you like a number of damage or absorb is considered bad. We'll see if that gets fixed later on. Maybe not, maybe it will. Who knows? All right, so that's it for your build. If you have questions about how to play Blood DK, be sure to check out the other guide, and also be sure to check out the text version for any updates, or if you just want it all like consolidated in one place. That's it for the video. Peace out. Thank you for watching.